Hey arty friends! So today I am going to show you how I edit my roughs for my comic pages. I have chapter 8 from 7-inch Kara open in Photoshop. These are, let's double check the size, I believe they are 300 DPI. Yep, they are 300 DPI scans, just about 8.5 by 11 approximately. We are going to be editing them in various ways, and then we're also going to be cropping them down to get rid of all this extra white space. So the cover here is pretty straightforward. There aren't really a lot of changes that are going to need to happen here. Something else we're going to have to do after we've edited these pages is we're going to need to boost the contrast and then convert them to blue lines and resize them for printing on the Canson 15 by 11 sheets of paper. And I'm going to be printing these on Canson Montval watercolor paper. So for this cover, I'm just going to demonstrate the full process. So we've already trimmed it down. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to convert it to grayscale. And then we're going to bump the contrast up a lot. So we're going to go to curves. And my process for converting images to blue lines is the same, kind of regardless. And then we are going to convert this to duotone. And I'll show you guys my duotone settings. What really matters is the C, the M, the Y, and the K. You want your K to be 0. You want your C to be 25 or below. And if you're having visibility problems, you can bump your Y up to 3. But most of my friends who do blue lines go even lighter than this. My eyesight is terrible. And when I print this on Canson Montval paper, I use a dye-based printer. You know, your typical inkjet printer that you can get at an office supply store is going to have a dye-based ink. So basically just not toner printer or a pigment-based ink. And I print it on my watercolor paper, and then when I stretch my watercolor paper, this is going to wash away. Then I want to change this for printing on a 15 by 11 piece of paper. So give me a second to think. And I'm going to want to keep this consistent. And then I am going to save this in a separate folder from my roughs. Just in case I have to go back and retrieve a file. I tend to always make new files when I'm doing something as drastic as this. Okay, so that is the basic process for correcting roughs. Here we have the first page of the comic, and it's got several notes on it. I'm sure you guys can see it, but I'm going to go over them anyway. I need to reduce the characters in this panel right here because there isn't going to be room for dialogue. I am going to need to pull out a little bit and do some redrawing in this panel. And I'm going to need to pull out in this panel as well and maybe even restage some of the characters. So this is a fairly significant redraw, and I'm going to take you guys through how I'm going to do that step by step. So before you begin making alterations, I would highly recommend you have, if you work with a physical copy, you have a physical copy of the file in front of you. If you work entirely digital, I would recommend, and you have notes on the side, I would recommend you make a copy, save it as like a JPEG, and have that open in another window. Just basically always have a copy of your notes handy and available, because one of the first things I'm going to recommend we do is I'm going to recommend we go ahead, and you don't have to, but this is going to kind of help with file sizes. First thing we're going to do is we're going to trim off all the excess. And if we lose our borders, we're going to have to redraw those. And then I make a copy and I hide the first copy. That way I'm not changing. I've never made an irredeemable, an unfixable alteration to my page. I'm always working on a copy of the page. So first thing, we are going to use the selection tool. Whoa, I did not want pink. So we cut out that panel. We repasted it back in. We're going to put it underneath the page. That way we retain our borders. And we are going to resize it. And I'm basically going to do that with all the panels that need to be resized. I am going to do some redrawing because my next step after this is my type pencils. And I don't want to have too many eraser marks. And you can label your panels if you like. I would recommend labeling your panels if you are going to pass this off to a writer or someone else for further revisions. I am not. Alright, so I have my resized panel drawings. The next step, I'm going to go ahead and start making my corrections. And for this page, it's really just continuing where the illustration leaves off, so I'm not guessing. And I am going to do a little blue line sketching, resize my brush. And I'll do one panel live for you guys, and then I will finish the rest of the panels on this page on my own and check in with you guys before. Alright, so I created a new panel, and that is my revision panel. Or rather, I created a new layer. That's where my blue lines are going to be. And I color picked the same blue from the page. Then I'm going to create another layer and grab the same sort of graphite color. And the reason I'm doing this is so that when I convert to grayscale and then I convert to blue lines, it's not going to be a noticeable shift where I made the corrections and where the original drawing was. So I'm going to have consistent results when I'm printing and when I am stretching the paper and dissolving the blue lines. And looking at, hold that out way too much. Looking at it, I'm kind of debating whether or not I want to shift it over more so we can see more of Dusty's face. Not that his expression matters so much, just because it's a little weird to have it cropped off in the middle of an eye. So I'm going to select all three layers, push it over a little bit more, and start making my corrections. Now, if you want to save your progress, that's fine. You don't actually need to go ahead and create a duplicate file, because when you save it as a PSD, it's already like a separate file. So you still have your original page scan. Now he looks like he's grinning at her. That's not a big deal. That's something I can tighten later on. Alright, so those are the corrections made for that first panel. I'm going to go ahead and correct these bottom two, and I will check in with you guys after they've been corrected. So the basic corrections have been made. Now I'm going to go in, and you see how this has been overdrawn? I'm just going to erase the part that was beneath it. So I'm going to erase the copy of the panel, and that way there aren't any conflicting or confusing lines. Now, I also have comments from my beta readers for these pages, and I'd like to give a quick shout out to Kabocha and to Joseph. Thank you so much for beta reading this chapter. It really helps me a lot. And Joseph pointed out that he said, I hope you're going to draw some junk on the floor or pack boxes or something. I can't imagine Meldina, that's Kara's mother, has time to stay on top of Kara to keep her room clean. So I think that is a fantastic suggestion. And that is something that's going to be added to multiple panels. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to make a new layer on top of everything. And I'm sorry, I am having so much trouble getting a nice amount of pull out. There we go. So I need to add room clutter. And this is a great opportunity for world building. This is a great opportunity to kind of develop Lilliputian life, especially children's lives, a little bit better. So one of the first things Kara would probably have on the floor would be paper and crayons. So I'm going to sketch that in this bottom panel, and then I'm going to sort of figure out the orientation. Actually, break the panel a little bit with some of her room junk. That'll be a cute way to sort of continue. And let's see, what else would she leave on the floor? Probably shoes. That's what I always leave on the floor. And for me, they're always on complete opposite sides of the room. Not sure why that happens, because I think I take them off in the same place. And then I want something here, and this, in fact, multiple somethings. So this is hanging clothes, so probably some clothes in a pile. And I'm trying to think about where it would show up in the camera as we rotate the room. And this is where doing a floor map can be really helpful. And then maybe her boots over here. That's looking pretty sloppy. So I'm going to go over this again now with my graphite color, kind of finalize it. And for me, there's a certain amount of detail that's going to end up getting added when I pencil for watercolor, and then even more detail added as I'm watercoloring. So I'm sketching things in, but I'm not super concerned about everything needing to be very tight, because when I print my blue lines, that often ends up getting kind of lost anyway. And to be honest, recording with OBS on a small Surface Pro 3 and running Photoshop, I'm not going to get as much nuance as I would normally be able to get. So I'm just kind of taking whatever I can get. And I think corrections, scanning, and digital lettering are some of the topics I have always kind of neglected because there wasn't a good way, I felt, for me to demonstrate them for you guys. So I am happy to use this as an opportunity to kind of remedy that. Maybe I'll throw another crayon here. And then we're going to go all the way down to the bottom panel and finish drawing all of that in. Alright, so we have our edited comic page. I'm going to save it again because we've made a fair amount of edits to it. And then we are going to go to Layer, Merge Visible. Then we're going to go to Image Size. Change that to 9. Then we're going to convert this to grayscale. Now see, all of these corrections ended up being darker than the actual illustration. So we're going to see how badly that affects our contrast. Because when you're setting your contrast, it basically picks the darkest point and then uses that, like, that's what will become black, basically. So if you have something that's significantly darker than everything else, it can skew your ability to convert things to black and white and have it be readable. But I think this will work okay. And then we're going to save this in the corrected roughs folder. I need to rename that. But corrected roughs it is. Alright, so that is 2 pages of 31 down. I'm not going to do every single page with you guys. I am going to do what I think is notable pages. I hope you guys noticed also that I left my perspective marks very clearly on the page, and that helped me extend the background a bit more to fill out the room. I'm sure that will come up in another page. So, I have my physical roughs in front of me, as well as copies of notes from Kabocha and from Joseph. And it looks like there isn't really anything on this page that they suggested I change. So this is going to be an easy page to correct because there's only 2 panels on here that really need any sort of revision. And you guys can clearly see the perspective lines here. Those were left just in case I needed to make any changes. So I have cropped the image. I'm going to duplicate the main layer, turn it off, insert a layer in between. That way we don't get a weird pink layer. So in this panel, there is concern that the mouth might be too big. Given that Kara has kind of a cartoony style, I don't think it's actually an issue, but I'm going to demonstrate how easy it would be to change the mouth size or to even reposition. And then this panel needs to be pulled out to leave room for text. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. So I copy it, I delete it, I paste it back in, then I put it under that layer and resize it. And I think I was thinking I was going to move Kara over a little bit, but I think I'll leave her where she is. So I will, since this is a fairly easy one, I'm going to demonstrate for you guys utilizing the grid we have already to extend our background a bit. So for this, what's covered up is, let's see. So Maldina's in their kitchen. There is a baseboard. And then there is sort of a brick hearth. I'm kind of eyeballing the perspective rather than using shift and drawing out the points in a straight line. You can do it whichever way works best for you. And I'm just kind of drawing out the rest of the panel. Now I'm going to create another layer, set it to multiply, and use the graphite color to tighten that up. And I realized I need to draw the ceiling in here because that would be visible. Of course, text will probably cover all that up, but I find it's nice to draw that through anyway. So I'm going to turn off Shape Dynamics, and I'm going to switch over to the light blue, and I'm on the light blue layer. And I'm I'm going to go over to the graphite layer. And I wanted a lighter line, so I turned on shape dynamics again, but it's a little too light. So I'm just going to kind of freehand it, and I'll just have to tighten it up with a ruler once I'm doing the pencils. But if you leave your perspective grid in, and if you have it dark enough that it picks up cleanly in the scan, it is a little bit more that you're going to have to color correct and drop, but it makes correcting the background a lot easier. So I'm going to save this, resize it. It doesn't really matter at what point you resize your image. And then we're going to merge all visible layers, convert to grayscale, adjust the contrast, and then convert it to blue lines and save it again. And that is the basic correction process for my Kara buffs. So on this page, I have a panel where I drew Kara in the wrong outfit. I am going to duplicate, or rather, I'm going to make a new layer, grab my non-photo blue sketching color, and pull up my reference because I have everybody's outfits in a sketchbook. So she's wearing this kind of overalls outfit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the outfit over what she's wearing first. Make another layer, grab the graphite color, and I'm avoiding where her arms and hands are, or rather avoiding drawing over where her arms and hands are. It's a little bit wide. Okay, so I am going to set the blue to multiply. And I'm going to, actually I'll just go ahead and erase from here. So I am back on my copied background layer, and I'm just going to erase the outfit that she's wearing underneath. The point with correcting roughs isn't to make a perfect product. It's just to make something that is correct enough that you can follow it when you are penciling or inking. So a quick correction is perfectly fine. Let's see, do we need to fix her hair? Yes, her hair is also wrong. And I think for that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to redraw her head. So I'm going to put the sketch layer back on normal, go to the graphite layer, and for this illustration, her hair is up in a bun held by a pony bead. And when I pencil this illustration on my watercolor paper, I'm going to tighten up her face. But I'm going to leave it as is for now. Actually, erase this because I want to move the head down just a little bit. So I'm going to go to the selection tool. And then reset the blue line layer back to multiply. And let's set the graphite layer. Ooh, that's color burn. We want multiply. And then we're going to erase what was originally there. And then go to the graphite layer again and just tighten that up so that we have it. So doing digital corrections on my traditionally drawn pages has really been a big game changer for me, and it's made doing comics, making comics, a lot easier for me to use traditional media. So for me, when people try and divide the two, I think that's an unnecessary division because using traditional techniques can be really great, and using digital techniques can be really great. So this page is going to require a pretty significant amount of revision. And I've noticed that I'm having difficulty articulating and also demonstrating at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to work on this in time lapse so that you guys can watch and then explain what I covered. Alright, so the notes my notes to myself suggest that I should separate these two, that there's too much overlap. Now, in the critique notes that Joseph gave me, however, he says that, I thought he said that he liked the overlap. He may have said that in purpose. Yeah, he says he likes the overlap because the notes that I'd presented him were the full scans, like what you guys are seeing. So I think I am going to leave the overlap because I know that in watercolor there's going to be enough tonal differentiation that hopefully it should be clear what both are. But I'm also going to sleep on it tonight and I may have changed my mind by tomorrow. I also broke the panel as per his suggestion in this panel here to kind of better indicate that she's shouting. And then over here, there was too much overlap again, so I separated them out. And that's something I'm going to clean up even more in the pencil stage. So I've decided, since I have 30 pages to revise, what I'm going to do is I am going to do 10 per evening with 11 on the last day, because I think there's 31 pages. And that way, I don't over-fatigue myself, because I've noticed that when I have kind of pushed myself too far in one evening, I tend to get really lazy. So hopefully by breaking this up, I can approach each day with a clear head and I can make good decisions that are going to lead to solid storytelling. So this is my last page for the evening. I'm going to go ahead and convert it to blue lines and then I'll show you guys my revisions. Now, not all of these revisions are going to be obvious since the checker transparent background is still on. But hopefully this will give you a gist of the amount of revision I will do in any given chapter. So we have the cover here, the first page of comic. As you guys can see, we resized a lot of stuff. We also added in some background sort of storytelling elements. We sort of developed the world a little bit more by adding clutter to her room. We resized only one panel here, and we resized her mouth here. We shifted this panel over to avoid a tangent and changed her expression. Changed her outfit over here, adjusted both of their expressions here, and added sound effects over there. Tweaked her expression here as well as hers. Adjusted the sizes for all three panels and drew in details to accommodate for that. Adjusted two panels, shifted, well actually 1, 2, 3, 4. We adjusted the size of 4 panels, shifting over 2 and drawing in additional details. We also moved this down and had it break this panel down here, which will hopefully have so you're not supposed to stack on the left side of the page, which is what I did. Not supposed to do that. However, in none of the beta notes was this an issue. And I don't know if it's just that I'm used to reading manga, but it doesn't seem to be an issue for me as well. This might be something I revisit and I may end up restaging anyway. But I had the foot here, break the panel border here to hopefully give a little bit more clarity to the flow. Resized various elements on him, and I'll probably do that further in the pencil stage. Shifted her down, resized these two panels, and drew in elements to accommodate for that. And then finally, for Ruff's page 10, we broke the panel border here, and we shifted things significantly over here. So tomorrow I'm going to be working on another 10 pages. Alright guys, I've got a new batch of 10 pages up. So we have pages 11 through 21, with 21 being the page that is currently at the front and foremost. So I am going to grab all my notes and we're going to go ahead and get started. So we have some notes for this page. Alright, so Joseph says, panel breaks are good, but it's weird to have two for the same character back to back. Can you change the camera angle on either of these panels, or just make the third panel a dome and pull Meldina closer in for full rug contact? And I'm laughing not because it's not a good suggestion, but rather full rug contact. And I also have some notes on this page as well. So one of the first notes I've made for myself is to pull out a bit, to move the railing down, and then Meldina's head is too big in that last panel. Ugh, it's not a good scan either. Sometimes graphite does not want to scan nice. So I'm doing kind of a hack job with the selection tool. Copy it, delete it, paste it, put that under the background copy layer, and then resize it a bit. I'm going to move them up. And then I am going to move that railing down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, or I'm going to cut this out rather. Actually, I could just get away with, I do want to move the railing down, but I could just move Kara up. And some of this is going to have to be redrawn. I'm not doing the greatest job of cutting things out. I think that got everything. It did. No, it did. Okay. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to set that to multiply, and that way I can see Kara through the revision. And I'm just going to move it down. Actually, I should go down quite a bit. And that's going to require a little bit of redrawing just to clean that up. I'm also going to move Meldina, Kara's mom, down in this panel. She's looking a little tall. And it's totally okay to do sort of cut and paste jobs like this. Nothing wrong with that. I can actually move her further out too. And that way, because this is something called stacking, where you have the same character from the same angle in all your panels, one on top of the other. And that's typically bad, lazy storytelling, unless you're doing it for a specific effect. And I feel like at the time, I was definitely going for a specific effect. And I feel like that probably didn't come across. So as much as I kind of hate to redraw a panel, I'm going to. The only reason I hate to do it is because it's additional effort and sometimes I'm just lazy. But it's going to make for a stronger comic page. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this panel out. And then I am going to drop the opacity down by a fair amount so I can still kind of see what's going on. Move that down, make a new layer. We're going to grab a light blue. We're going to grab a graphite color. Ooh, that's way too light. we're going to go ahead and get to redrawing. So the first thing we need to do is we need to do a sketch of how we're going to restage this. And I have honestly not quite thought it over. So to avoid stacking, we could break the 180 rule and swing the camera around from the other direction. So Kara's over here and Meldina's over here. Not really supposed to break the 180 rule, and I don't necessarily think that's going to improve the storytelling for that panel either. I want something that's kind of clear to read. I would like to see both of their faces if possible. Now we've already got a side view here, so this is going to require a little bit of thought because I don't have a good alternative. Okay, so I went downstairs to make myself some dinner, and like you do, I had a possible solution while I was busy doing other things and didn't have a scrap of paper to put it on. So, ran back upstairs so I could do this. I was thinking we could zoom really tight in on their hands, which would be an uninflected panel, I believe. And these can be really good for storytelling because they are typically a little more visually interesting, and they leave a lot of nuance for the reader to infer. So they just provide a new level or a different level of reader interaction, reader engagement. So what I'm going to do is I selected the area I want. I copied it. And I'm going to zoom way in. Now, I want to leave enough information that they can tell who it is. And I'm going to want to leave enough room for the text. But I think zooming in really tight on the shot solves a lot of problems. We no longer have the panel break. We have a very different kind of shot. It's not an extreme close-up, but it's definitely a close-up. I think it's going to be enough to kind of break the monotony that we had going on. So, as with our prior pages, we're going to want to draw in the rest of the information. Now I kind of wish I hadn't deleted all that because I could have just tightened it up or redrawn it. Actually, I can still do that. The line between lazy and efficient is sometimes very narrow. So I'm going to turn this back on, duplicate that, embiggen. I'm going to have to embiggen more. I do like their expressions in that panel though. But I think this is a better storytelling choice. Or at least I hope it's a better storytelling choice. I may have to run it by the people who so generously beta read to see if it is truly an improvement. Alright. I'm going to select the area. Go to inverse. There we go. And then I'm just going to bump up the contrast because this is something that I can tighten up when I am penciling the page. All right, so that's our revisions for page 11. We're going to save. And then we're going to convert to blue lines. So on the very next page, I run into a snag. As you guys can see, I pulled in to show Meldina removing the bandage from Kara's arm. I'm pulled in on this shot too, and actually I just discovered something else wrong. She should have a bandage on her arm in every single panel. So, I'm going to attempt to add that. And if it doesn't show up, I'm going to have to write that down and hope that I remember to check my notes beforehand. I'll just sketch it in like that. And then on this panel, this is the big zoom in shot. So it's really important that I remember to have the bandage on there. However, this is a problem panel now because it's identical to another panel on the next page. In fact, the other panel is almost in the same spot. Now, if I did this enough, it would start to read as a theme, and a theme can be a good thing, but I don't know that this is enough for this to feel like a theme. So, my solution is, this is a good solution for this page though. I can pull in even more in this panel so that you really just see their hands, or I can pull out in this panel so that there's less, or I guess I can pull in super tight on this panel. I think what I want to do is I think I'm going to pull in on this bottom panel here. So I'm going to merge these layers, and then I'm going to cut this out and do a copy paste job. That behind, and we're going to pull in really tight on their hand. Now, we still do have an uninflected shot on both pages. It's still very similar. It still really might not work, but I think I'm going to let my beta readers decide and let me know. So I want to delete the excess, so I am going to select it, select inverse, and delete that, and then save it again. Okay, so we are here on page 13, and the notes for this panel says to flip it from behind Kara's shoulder so we can see Naomi's face. Now, you can't flip a traditional drawing. I can't flip it in any such way that we'll see her face. So I'm going to have to redraw it. So what I've already done is I've already selected it and put it on another layer. I'm going to go ahead and drop the opacity, and I'm just leaving that there as kind of a reminder to myself. And the notes say to draw it from behind Kara's shoulder. So, sketch in her head there. And I might go smaller with that. Create another layer and start, well, put that back where that goes. Start drawing in Naomi's face. And I have Naomi on a separate layer from Kara, so I can freely resize everything. Now this is going to be an upshot, and I haven't laid down any perspective grids for this particular redraw. And I'm going to go ahead and find that duplicate layer and go ahead and turn it off because I don't think I need it anymore. Okay, so her hand would be on the doorknob of the door. We have a low horizon line. Okay, so I'm going to want to take everything with Kara's head, and I'm going to make it smaller and higher up on the panel. I may end up deleting her head entirely because it doesn't necessarily work for it. So as you guys can see, they were pretty substantial. In fact, this entire panel was completely reworked, and I also changed a lot about this panel. I'm having some difficulty with running OBS and making my panel corrections. So I'm kind of just going for the best that I can under those circumstances, and I know that I'll be able to tighten certain things or correct certain things when I'm actually penciling this. Now, I typically try to avoid too much revision in the pencils phase because for me, pencils are kind of like my inks for my Cara pages. It's the last phase where I'm going to be improving or tweaking artwork, and I don't want to mar the paper surface or make it difficult for me to control the watercolor. If I abrade the surface too much, then I can't watercolor on top of it. But I think this is enough information that I can do a pretty good job correcting it, and I'm probably going to want to reference for this panel a lot better because that is a lot looser than I really want. So I'm going to go ahead and save my changes and start making my page alterations so that I have a completed blue line ready for printing. So in this bottom panel here, Naomi has to be almost completely reworked, but everything else is fine. So what do you do if you just want to correct one panel, or rather one character in a panel? Well, what we're going to do is we are going to cut her out and put her on another layer. And we're going to drop the opacity and then redraw her. Alright, so we've made some pretty massive revisions to Naomi over here, but I think she looks a lot better than she did on the original page. It certainly fits better and doesn't look as flat and strange. So I'm going to go ahead and save this page as well, and then convert it over to blue lines. Alright, so here's the last page for the batch. This page also had pretty significant revisions made to it. Several panels were resized significantly to better allow for storytelling. So this batch of pages had a lot more revision, and it really feels like as I'm progressing through Cara, I'm spending more time in the roughs phase revising, and I don't know if it's because I'm using more shorthand in the drawn roughs phase, and I know that I can correct things in the the digital corrections phase, or if I'm just more confident with sketching digitally and doing digital corrections, so I'm making corrections that I would have otherwise let slide. I don't really know. Hopefully it ends up in a better cohesive chapter, and it's not just me slowly going crazy or something. But I'm looking at this panel, I'm like, it doesn't quite look right, but it doesn't quite look wrong. Oh well. So I'm going to go ahead and resize this last page, and then we're going to kind of go through these 10 pages like we did with the last batch of 10. So we started today with corrections on page 11. We pretty significantly chopped up this panel here. We greatly increased the close-up on this final panel. On the next page, we have another close-up. Hopefully that won't get too repetitive. That's something I'm still kind of thinking about. We pulled out on this panel to better show the gesture. We adjusted the hand here. These two panels were adjusted for size. This one had a little more of the figure drawn in. Kara was Dutched in this panel. A sound effect was added up there. This panel here with the hand on the doorknob was pulled out. More detail was added. This panel was completely restaged, and you guys will hopefully be able to see it later on. This bottom panel here, Naomi was almost completely redrawn. In fact, she was completely redrawn. I don't know why I say almost. The only real change made on this page is that I Dutched the spoon to better indicate a wobble. The only real change on this page was we pulled out on Meldina here. The only real change here was we pulled out on this bottom panel, drew in a little bit more, shrank Kara down, added a sound effect. I don't think anything was changed on this page. Oh, added in the hand, kind of iffy on that. The only change on this page is that the candle was moved over. And then this page had some pretty significant changes. We zoomed out on this panel to better show the door frame. The stairs were drawn in. Zoomed out on this panel. Shifted so I reduced the space on this panel and increased the space on this panel pretty significantly and spread the room out more so there was less overlap. Zoomed out on this panel. All right, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pages corrected today. I will see you guys tomorrow with another batch of chapter 8 pages for revision. So we are on day 3. I have my last 10 roughs pulled up. And I've got my notes on those as well. And I think you guys pretty much get the gist how this works. If I encounter anything that's unusual or is going to require a sort of a technique that we haven't covered before, then I will make sure to turn the recording back on. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and correct these pages and then check in with you guys when they're finished. So I just wanted to go ahead and introduce you guys to the day. It's our final 10 pages, so I'll be happy to finish the corrections on this chapter and get to printing these out on watercolor paper. Okay, so for this panel, I've already split them up. I've already put them on separate layers, and I've already started moving her. And what I want to do, and I resized it, so I made them a lot smaller. What I want to do is I want to move her down more, and then I am going to decrease the opacity because this is going to end up being a redraw panel. So I will show you guys how I'm going to do that in time lapse. right, so we've got that panel finished up. And doing this digitally is much quicker than doing it traditionally, but it still adds a lot of time and wear and tear to my hands when I'm doing revisions like this. Now, looking at that sleeve, it's a little big. So instead of redrawing it, I'm going to select it and just resize it. Another thing, though, I could do is I can move the skirt. Actually, I need to grab the waistband. Move the skirt on her dress down. And then fixed the bust up here because that got all messed up. I guess that looks better. Looks better than the original panel. And I think that's it for the corrections on that page. That was quite an intense page for corrections. So I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go ahead and resize it. So on this page, we have a panel that I don't want to entirely redrawn. What I've already done is I've cut it out, I've resized it, and I've separated Naomi's legs from her torso because that was feeling a little bit squat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw in the part of her torso that is missing. Now this is something that I have done before in the when I was penciling the page, but it's not really something I want to leave to chance or, ooh, that's still kind of a short torso. Anyway, it's not really something I want to leave so open-ended, so I'm going to go ahead and finish drawing it in. I also need to pull up outfit reference. There we go. See, I was sketching in the wrong thing. Alright, that's already looking better. So I'm just going to tighten the pencils up. And I think that is that for that page. And basically the point of these sort of revisions are to work within your limitations and your comfort zone. If you can leave something open-ended and kind of loose until you get to the pencil stage, that's fine. If you need to really tighten things up, that's fine as well. It's really about making the best product you can. Save that. And it doesn't seem like I have any other notes for this page. I could probably pull in a bit tighter on Kara's expression there. Or, I don't know, it's feeling kind of samey, so I'm trying to think of how I can kind of better emphasize push and pull on this page. And that's when you have a good variety of shot choices. It's kind of a dialogue-heavy scene, so the variety isn't necessarily the best. Let's try pulling in on this scene a bit more. Alright, so I've got the last 10 pages finished. I want to share them with you guys and discuss the changes. So on this page, we flip this panel over. On this page, we resized Rowan and we Dutched the hand a little bit more. On this page, we resized the feet and legs and drew in the rest of the details. We also resized this panel. Here, we completely redrew a panel, and you guys will see how this turns out when I'm penciling it. I resized these two panels, and I basically redrew this panel using the original panel as my template.
so I could switch the outfits out. This was zoomed in, and the finger here was resized. This was zoomed out, and we redrew the torso. This was zoomed out as well, so the page has a little bit more dynamism. Dynamics? Is a little more dynamic. On this page, the only thing I did was I resized the phone a bit. On this page, I just resized his hand. And then finally, on this page, I just moved Dusty's head over. And that is about it for Chapter 8. My next step is I'm going to print these out on Canson Montval watercolor paper using my Pixma Pro 9000, which has dye-based ink. And that's going to kind of dissipate when I stretch my pages. So from here, well, no. Yes, and then I'm going to pencil it. I was going to say from here on out, I'm watercoloring, but no, I still have a pencil stage left where I'm actually going to tighten up a lot of these details. But that's really easier when it's smaller details like fixing faces and adding wrinkles to clothing rather than major details like resizing an entire panel. So I hope you guys found this corrections demonstration helpful, useful, and informative. You don't have to use my methods of correction if it doesn't work for you. But I hope you guys find something that works to help you make the best comics you can possibly make. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to get caught up on 7-inch Kara, you can do so at 7inchkara.com or 7inchkara.tumblr.com. And for more tutorials on how to make watercolor comics, please check out my Watercolor Basics series here on this channel and over at natosoup.blogspot.com. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you again really soon. Bye, guys!